Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, regular meeting of council. Be it resolved that the meeting be called to order and the agenda for the meeting be adopted or circulated. Could I have a mover, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Pat-Cam moves. Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Shetty seconds it. Any comments, questions? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Takes us down now to number 7, confirmation of minutes, 7.1, Committee of the Whole meeting of May 7th, 2024. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of council held on May 7th, 2024 be approved. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councilor Campbell moves. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Councilor Councilor Kleiber seconds it. Any comments, questions? Hearing none. Can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. We go down to 7.2, regular meeting of May 9th. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 9th, 2024 be approved. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Pat-Cam moves it. Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Shetty seconds it. Can I, got any comments, questions? Hearing none. Can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Go down to number 8.1, delegations. Ed
Clogier.
Clogier of the Municipal Relations Property Assessment Service District Supervisor, Tax Impact Report. Yep, by all means.
I just want to confirm copies of the were made available to council.
We'll be sharing them tonight. Ed, do you have a preference for which goes up first?
Well, no, I don't. So let me know which one you'd like us to proceed with, and we'll, I do have paper copies of the reports for council as well. Approach council.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Copies as well.
We have, thanks.
I guess you could state your name and address.
Sure. So my name is Ed Koloje. I'm the manager of the Property Assessment Office in Selkirk. I'm not a resident of West St. Paul, but I have many friends that are, and I think it's a great community. And I'm also joined by two co-workers as well. Michelle Basinger is our local assessor for West St. Paul, and Nadia Tiborowski is one of our newer staff that's recently joined us, and I thought I'd have her come along and see how these tax impact meetings go.
So, thank you very much. Welcome to our meeting.
Right, so a couple of questions. How much time do I have? I could do this in 15 minutes, but sometimes I find I recognize, or there are some newer faces on council. So sometimes I like to explain a bit about property assessment, just so you have a good base of knowledge with property assessment as well. So, and I think I have some interesting figures that you may find interesting that you may want to jot down some notes on. So I see our tax impact report is here, and this is an important document. Every 2 years, the province of Manitoba has a legislated requirement for all property to be reassessed. And so these assessments will be coming into effect next year for 2025, but the valuations are based on an April 1st, 2023 estimate of market value. And what this report shows is the change in value from April 2021 to April 2023 within West St. Paul. So there have been some pretty big changes in West St. Paul over the last couple of years, and I'll be speaking to some of the construction activity, comparing 9 years ago to today. As well, I'll be talking about some of the market activity as well that you may find interesting. So how do we arrive at the assessment figures? It's based on market value, and we determine that by reviewing sales of all properties. So between April 1st of 2021 and April 1st of 2023, there were 709 properties that sold in West St. Paul. And these numbers that I'm sharing with you are not in the reports, but they're additional information. So what we do is we go through a sales verification process. Basically, we review every single sale that comes from the Land Titles Office. So all private sale transactions, all properties that sell to realtors come to us, and our staff review those sales. And what we're trying to determine is if, in fact, those are true market value transactions. Sometimes you have sales of convenience between family members, so those would not be considered valid sales. Sometimes you have a seller perhaps under extreme duress that may let a property go for less than what they normally would, so that would not be considered a valid sale. But a negotiation where you have someone that pays what they think is a fair price and a seller sells for what they believe to be a fair price, they come to an agreement, that's a valid sale. And so of those 709 sales that we started off with, we ended up with 690 that we considered to be valid sales. So those 690 sales are used to come up with the assessments for the 4,800 plus properties in West St. Paul. So that's how we arrive at those numbers. And the market's been very active over the last couple of years. So in West St. Paul, I looked at all the sales that were north of $500,000, and we had 233 of those sales that were north of $500,000. And sales that were north of $1 million, there were 18 of those. So I did notice a bit of a change in the makeup of those sales. 4-6 years ago, we had lots of development sales. So speculators buying large tracts of land for development, and they have since developed those parcels. And so a lot of the big sales we've seen this time around are often blocks of lots from developer to builders. So that makes up a big chunk of those $1 million plus sales. But we also had $4 million plus sales of residential properties. So single family residential properties selling for in excess of $1 million. So that's that used to be an unheard of figure not that long ago, and it's quite commonplace now. So all good, strong indications of value. I also looked a bit just at how many permits we've been inspecting as a branch in West St. Paul. So I looked at 2014, which wasn't that long ago. So back in 2014, our staff completed 29 residential inspections. So that was 29 inspections for permits. So a permit for a new house, a sunroom, a deck, a shop, farm building, etc. Last year, we completed 429 inspections. So much more than tenfold increase. Then we look at commercial construction. In 2014, there were 4 commercial permits that were inspected, and last year there were 54. So we're looking at a factor of 10 times in less than 10 years in terms of construction activity. So that is quite substantial. Out of our office, we handle the assessments for 24 municipalities, and currently West St. Paul is our busiest municipality for new construction. And it's not even that close right now. And well, you can just see driving through the community, there's lots of development along the perimeter. There's the residential developments. Every single one of those lots that is split, our office processes those subdivision splits. Every single one of those homes that gets built is inspected by one of our staff. Every one of those commercial entities that's built, our staff come out and inspect. So we're quite busy, and I'm sure your staff are extremely busy generating those supplementary tax bills that are sent out when all of that added assessment is added to the tax roll. So it's I'd say it's a good news story in terms of the growth of the community.
Sorry to interrupt you, just a quick
Sure.
question. So what do you guys go out and inspect? What are you inspecting when you go out and look at?
So we assess the market value of any building improvement. So if there is a new house, we're assessing the value of that house. If there's a new apartment building, same thing.
So you don't go off the sold value, you go off the building value?
Nope, no. What we do is we will have copies of the blueprints that we obtain from the Red River Plan, and we will build it up, cost it up. And it's, our internal costing is one thing, but that's a modified cost that we apply. Because in some areas, you may, for every dollar you put into an improvement, you may get 80 cents back. In other areas, it may be dollar for dollar. And when we review sales, that's one thing that we look at. So, yeah, lots of activity. What else can I share here? In terms of the number of rolls of dwelling units, in 2012, there were 2,419 rolls with a dwelling unit. Right now, there's 4,793 rolls with a dwelling unit. So that's almost doubling of the number of, almost a doubling of rolls with dwelling units in a short time. So again, that's huge, huge growth there. All right, so how does this impact your assessment? Well, on page 2 of your report, we break into that. So we've done our sales analysis, and we then apply new values to the assessments. And provincially in Manitoba, the average assessment is increasing about 13%. Within West St. Paul, the average increase is about 23%. That's not all market necessarily, because in West St. Paul you have a lot of new construction. So that part of that goes into that 23%. So there's also changes that occur through the course of a year to a property, improvements, renovations, additions, etc. But a good chunk of that enhancement in value is derived from market. When we look at the tax base for West St. Paul, your residential component is by far your largest component. It's just over 785 million when we look at the portioned assessment. It's about 82% of your tax base. So that's a huge component. Now the residential single family class is increasing in value by about 25.2%. The apartment valuation's not going up as much. Apartments are valued on income, whereas when we value single family, that's based on the direct comparison approach, where we compare sale to sale. Whereas multifamily type properties are valued on the income that they generate. So overall, your residential portfolio is going up just under 25%. There is a bit of a farm component in West St. Paul, but not that substantial. That's going up about 18%. We see a continued trend with farm value across Manitoba, with farm values increasing. Your commercial component's increasing by about 16% in value, and the commercial component makes up about 12.5% of your tax base. Institutional properties, those would be things like Middle Church Nursing Home, for example, schools, etc. That is about, not a very big portion of your tax base. That's going up about 6%. Railway is going up about 39%. And designated recreational, which many people don't know what that is, that's referring to golf courses, and that's going up about 7.4%. So,
Can you just explain a little, why is the rail, like, it's a big jump, like 39%, so,
Yeah.
how, like, nothing's changed, there's not new railways running through here, how do you justify number going that
the
high?
land that the railways sit on has gone up in value. And so that is, Most municipalities I'm delivering this presentation to, Railway's seeing about a 20-25% increase, but in West St. Paul, there's just been such a increase in the land values that that's also reflected in the railway assessment. So yeah, overall, the assessments are increasing by 23%. If you were to keep your mill rate where it's at, you would see a 23% increase in tax revenue next year. Typically, that doesn't happen. Typically, a municipality will adjust the mill rate down. You still need, I presume, you need to raise more money than you would have in previous years, but typically that's what happens. And I'll explain that a bit more on page 4. So we make some projections with this report. So what we do, or when we make these projections, we know what your 2023 budget was, so we know what your expenditures were in 2023, but we don't know what it'll be for 2025. So we make the assumption that your budget will be exactly the same for 2025. So that's a bit of a perfect world scenario, and I don't live in a perfect world scenario, and I'm sure council doesn't as well. So these are probably understating the tax impact a bit. You would need to adjust for inflationary pressures, so which would add a bit to this. But we're looking at the single-family residential component. So there's a number at the far right that says 6.4. So what that's referring to is the projected tax increase on a single-family residential property that saw an assessment increase of 25.2%, which is the average residential increase for West St. Paul. We see a slight decrease in the apartment rate, going down about 8.4%. Most of the other property classes are fairly flat, except for the institutional, which are coming down a bit, and the designated recreational. But again, these numbers probably understate the tax impact to a degree. At the bottom of page 4 is a chart that talks about the number of people that should see a tax increase and that should see a tax decrease as a result of this reassessment. And our projections are that just over 2,600 properties will see a tax increase, and just under 2,000 would see a tax decrease. Again, assuming your budget's identical in 25 to what it was in 23. And this is also taking account the school tax portion, which we have a chart on the next page that takes the school division out of the equation.
Sorry, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I'm just trying to catch up. So this chart here at the bottom of page 4, the colored chart, you're saying that if we reduce the mill rate, this is what the chart would look like?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Assuming you were spending the same amount in 2025 that you did in 2023. So that's where it's understating the number of people that would see a tax increase, just because of inflationary pressures, I would imagine, whatever that is.
So then what's the reason for showing that chart then?
It's just to give the best projection that we can make with the information that we have. And when these projections are made, we don't have those budgets.
So, but you don't include inflationary increases?
No. Because every municipality goes through that process, and also the school divisions go through that process.
Okay.
On page 5, we show a chart where we take the school division out of it, and we're looking only at the municipal levy. And here, the tax fluctuation is a bit less. And that's because we're only looking at the municipal portion. One thing that should be indicated is the Seven Oaks School Division shares boundary. The vast majority of the municipality shares that school division with North Winnipeg. Yet the overall assessment increases in West St. Paul are a bit more than they are in Winnipeg. So there's a bit of a tax shift to West St. Paul from the city, and that's reflected in the chart on page 4. On page 5, we take the school division out, and so that's where we're only looking at the municipal portion. And there's this line at the bottom that says properties with assessment increase less than 23% should see a municipal tax decrease. And those greater than that should see a tax increase. Now, I need to put an asterisk next to that figure. There were some school tax changes made in this year's provincial budget that do have an impact on the school taxes as well. And I can speak to that on page 7 of the report very shortly. Any questions about these numbers? I am throwing out lots of numbers and it's a lot to digest.
I do have a question on the school tax portion.
Yeah.
And how that's applied. It seems to me that the school division is eating up more than half of the municipal property tax bill.
Yeah.
So are school divisions not adjusting downward too?
So I can't speak for the school divisions, but
Like, because you're saying municipalities adjust downward.
they should.
They should.
Yeah, with,
But-
again, the tax base has grown quite a
Right,
bit.
right. Well, yeah, it's the same thing for the school divisions, so.
Yeah.
Do you also present to the school divisions?
No.
No, okay. Is this by invitation? Is that why you're here,
We basically request to come and speak to all councils, just so that's out there. In a perfect world, yes, I'd love it if the school divisions were also there as well to get this information.
or? Interesting. Okay, thank you.
So railroads pay property tax?
Yeah.
They do, right?
Yeah, it's, now, the increase you're seeing here is quite a bit more than normal for railroads, but again, a lot of that's based on the value of the land that the railways are on. It's not a big portion of your overall tax base, like looking at it, 773,000 out of 961 million, we're not talking a big amount, but there is a bit of an uptick there. You have no pipelines in West St. Paul, so that should be noted, because a number of municipalities do, and there aren't in West St. Paul.
When you say pipeline, the major pipeline like that runs across Canada or? Okay.
Now, on page 6 of the report, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but, so sometimes when there's massive tax shifts between various property classes, municipal councils do have the ability to make some changes, but based on the numbers that I've seen here, there isn't anything that would warrant that. But council, if it wants to, can phase in tax increases or decreases. You could even vary property class portion changes as well if you wanted to. It's just that they haven't been enacted. The ability is there, it's just hasn't been practiced.
Can you provide an example of that, just high level?
For example, residential properties pay taxes on 45% of the assessed value. Farm property pays taxes on 26% of the assessed value. So a municipality, if they wanted, say, to help out the farming community, might say, we want to lower the portion on farmland to 10%. By doing that, it's going to cost the other property classes more.
I see.
And you could do the same with any of the
Got it. Okay, understand.
Again, the option's there, but I've been doing this quite a long time and I've never seen it enacted, so. Okay, page 7. So in this year's, the last couple of years, the previous provincial government had made it a mandate to try to remove school taxes off property tax bills. And it started off with a 25% rebate check on property. And through the years, it went up from 25% to 37.5%, and then last year it was 50%. There was a homeowner's tax credit of $700, and that was reduced down to $350. And each year, people would get a check on their primary residence. Commercial property owners would get a check equal to 10% of the taxes, school taxes. And farmers also were receiving a check. For next year, that is changing. And so what's going to happen is every person that has, on your primary residence, you will be eligible to receive a $1,500 tax credit that will be applied to the school taxes on your property tax bill. So let's say you're paying $1,000 in school taxes on your property. That credit will wipe out your school taxes, but the excess $500 will be a lost credit. You won't be able to apply that to your municipal tax bill. Let's say, and I did a quick search. So that for people with lower valued properties, this will have a positive impact on the overall tax bill. There's sort of a break-even point, and that's not exactly determined yet. But what I did was I ran a couple examples. So I tried to determine what is the median residential assessment for West St. Paul. And for next year, it's going to be $587,800. So what that means is exactly half of the residents in West St. Paul will be assessed below that, and half will be assessed higher than that. So the person with that type of assessment, if I work it back to a 2023 tax bill, would have been paying roughly $4,500. And of that, about $2,700 was in school taxes. So under the previous system, there was a $350 homeowner's school tax credit, plus a check was sent out for 50% of the total tax bill. So that ended up being a $1,525 check for someone paying just over $3,000 in taxes. Under the new system, that same person would get $1,500 credit applied to their school tax bill, and so it should be relatively even situation, where it's not ahead, not behind, so that's fine. I did a search of the highest property tax bill in West St. Paul. So there's a resident paying $15,000 a year in West St. Paul, and their school tax bill was $9,800. So that person would have received a check for $4,900. Instead, they'll be getting a credit of $1,500, so they'll be out about $3,400. So that impacts, I'd say, not a big portion of the municipality, but a number of the residents that are assessed, in that $750,000 range and up will be paying more on the property tax bills as a result of this change. Whereas lower valued properties should see a bit of a reduction overall. Now, if anyone owns a secondary residence, be it rental property, I don't know of any cottages in West St. Paul, but if anyone in the room owns a cottage anywhere in Manitoba, you're losing that school tax rebate check. And that's all for next year. Also this year, should be noted, there are no checks this year. The amount is being sent out, but it's being applied directly to the property tax bill. So a lot of people this year, when they get their property tax bill, it may look like it's dropped. And that, well, it may not necessarily be the case. It's just that the check's been automatically applied to the property tax bill. So next year, council members may get a number of questions about that. We'll probably get lots of questions as well. But that's the reasoning for that.
Just a question on that. So what are places doing when people have been paying for tips through the year, and they were paying on the original higher amount, and now there's $1,500 credited towards? So what do you recommend, or what are people doing, or communities doing?
I may have to switch that one over to the administrators, because we're not involved in
That's fine.
in
That's fine. I just wanted to
Yeah.
see if you knew what others were doing, or.
A lot of places are waiting until they get their actual tax bills to make the adjustments.
And then would they send out a check?
It's up to the resident if they request a refund. Honestly, it depends. We'd have to look, like I can't say, because we have over 700 properties on tips. I don't know what the impact is going to be. And our tax bills may be delayed this year. Just due to this change with our software, this, the download isn't gonna function properly, so we're making arrangements for that.
Okay, so, just trying to give council a heads up about that. Today, in the mail stream, everyone will be getting their assessment notices. I've attached some brochures here. We strongly encourage people to set up online accounts so they can review their property assessment information. Every assessment notice will have a client number, so you need to know your client number when you go online, but you can set up an account on our website and you can review your assessment on there. What I really like about our website is we try to be as transparent as possible. So we do try to show sales information on similar properties. So if a property has sold, there will be a dollar sign, and you click on that dollar sign and you can see what people paid on a property. Any property that has sold after April 2023 will not be on our website because those sales were not used in our analysis. So if you want to see what the neighbor's property sold for 2 months ago, you won't see that. But if you want to see what they sold it for a year and 3 months ago, yeah, it'll be there. We're also having an assessment open house, and in West St. Paul, that'll be on June 13th from 3 to 7. So when it comes to assessment complaints, 'cause I'm sure council will get lots of complaints, we'll answer any question that has to do with the valuation, because that's our realm of specialty. We're valuation experts. We do get lots of calls about, oh, I don't get sewer water, I only get garbage pickup once a week, and that's the only service I get. So those type of service-related questions, we can't speak to. But in terms of valuation, is the valuation right, or is it wrong? People can talk with their staff, and we're more than happy to speak with people if they have any concerns. We're not gonna pretend to be perfect, but if we've made a mistake, we'll definitely try to fix it. And if people are calling, they can file an assessment appeal, but I would strongly suggest before they do that they talk to one of our staff, and they'll give an explanation of how the information we have on the property, share some of the sales that were used in arriving at that property. And hopefully that resolves situations.
How many years back are you able to like ask for a reassessment for? Can you go multiple years back?
So the legislation is current year plus 1 year. So that goes if, like on a supplementary adjustment, so let's say, like someone's calling to complain about their assessment for 2025, like we will look at it for 2025. So we send these notices out in advance, so people have the opportunity to question them before they come into effect. It's sort of like a instant replay, I guess, of assessment. Now, this year's assessment is locked for 2024, right? So we send out assessment notices in advance so they can be questioned. But once the assessment roll is locked, those values are finalized. So my question, or my response about current year plus year, what that's referring to is, say, because in West St. Paul there's lots and lots of new homes, but we have deadlines throughout the year where we can add or subtract to the tax roll. So in West St. Paul, we have a supplemental deadline of September 3rd. So that's our last day to add any new construction onto the tax roll. So what sometimes happens is, in the following year, let's say the house is occupied October of 2023. Let's say it was occupied last year. We couldn't add it last year because it wasn't occupied yet. But when we go to assess it this year, we'll be adding it from October of last year to the end of December this year. So they would be getting a 15-month taxable. If there was a fire, residence was destroyed October 2023, they would get a supplementary reduction. So we'd go back to the date of the fire, and they'd get a credit for 15 months. So like we just try to call it the way it is. And if we have to add value on a supplemental listing, we do, and if we have to subtract value on a supplementary listing, we do.
Ed, if after talking to your staff, a homeowner wants to do assessment appeal, is there a fee for that?
No.
No, no fee, okay.
A municipality can impose a fee if it wants to. There's some jurisdictions that do. But up until now, there's been no fee, otherwise that's changed. So
Okay.
there's no disincentive to file an appeal. I can say that last year, for West St. Paul, out of 4,800 properties, we had 3 appeals. Now, how many calls did we get, Michelle? A lot. So we had lots of calls, but we had 3 appeals. Now, that doesn't happen every year like that. I looked, in the last 5 years, our appeals have ranged from 3 to 31 appeals in our busiest year in the last 5 years. So, like, again, we're more like the referee. You know, sometimes you make a call and then people don't agree with it, and that's fine. But we have to be able to defend those values with sales.
So out of those 3 appeals, did any of them get changed?
Well, one was denied,
Okay,
one was withdrawn, so the person appealed and changed their mind, and the other was dismissed, so none were changed last year.
But how if we had them in today?
I know. That'll be good, man.
But it's not like that every year. It's typically our reassessment years are busier for sure. So I'd anticipate we'd have more appeals this year.
I'm gonna ask, is it okay if I bring up the case that we talked about earlier today, or no?
I don't see why not. It's not probably not. It has been formally, we have been formally notified. Been informally notified.
Okay, I guess we'll have to speak to your office afterwards.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
Sure.
So what had happened was, the property owner appealed back in, I think, 2020. Came here, received, confirmation, and went to the municipal board for 2020, 21, and 22. And then the assessment was adjusted in 23 for that particular property. So we're getting a notice saying that we have to adjust 2020, 21, and 22. That's the best I can do for you without
Yeah, and
giving
it's,
as much information.
it's not just a residential property,
No.
so
No.
it's a substantial.
Is that an ambulance garage?
No.
No.
It's, yeah.
She probably won't want any more questions.
No, so the appeal process, the board of revision is the local level where assessment appeals are heard. And municipality can set up a board of revision however it wants. There's different models out there. Some municipalities will have council sit on a board of revision. Others will appoint local experts. Some will have a hybrid model. That's up to the municipality how you want to run that. Sometimes if people are not happy with the decision they get at an appeal hearing at the local level, they can take it to the next step, which is the municipal level, which for us is like the Supreme Court of Assessment. And so appeals sometimes go there. They are sometimes backlogged at the municipal board several years. So that happens quite a bit. And it's frustrating for us because we like to have appeals dealt with as quickly as possible, but sometimes, especially if there's legal, it's a legal opinion or a legal appeal as well, because matters of assessment laws go to the court of appeal. And so that can sometimes take quite a while to get resolved, so that may be what happened here, but we can
Yeah,
talk afterwards.
yeah.
And can that be appealed by us, this decision? No.
No. I do have some very important dates, so, to share. So we have a supplementary deadline date of September 3rd. The municipality needs to get those notices out in the mail by September 20th. What we try to do, because there's so many in West St. Paul, is we do try to send out batches of these as we process them. But it's a lot of work for municipal staff,
We
for sure.
greatly appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So we definitely try to work with the municipality. Boards of revision need to be advertised properly, so this is maybe not so much a note for council, but just for administrative staff, just there's legal requirements with advertising. Appeal deadline is October 21st. So that's really important. If we get 2 appeals or 200 appeals, we got 2 weeks to prepare for it. And so, that's a very important date. November 6th will be our Board of Revision date in West St. Paul, so that's, we'll see how busy it is this year, but those are important dates to be aware of. So, if there's no further questions about the tax impact report, I'd just like to talk with council a little bit about a special project that we did in West St. Paul and several other municipalities this past winter. And we're using lots of new technologies in assessment, and part of it helps us to make sure assessments are fair and equitable. We try very hard to have assessment information that's up to date as much as possible in our district. So from our office, we're responsible for valuing 94,000 properties. It's physically impossible to go out and inspect 94,000 properties. So even though we have a reassessment right now, typically in a reassessment year, we don't go and re-inspect every single property in the municipality. But this past winter we did, with a special project using aerial imagery. And so that's what this is about. So, if you could switch to, sorry. So a little bit about property assessment services. So we provincially,
Next one.
oh, back up, sorry, there.
Okay.
So provincially, we assess 445,000 properties. That's everything outside of the city of Winnipeg. So outside of the city of Winnipeg, assessments are handled by the province of Manitoba. And so we're independent from the municipalities. We assess a lot of property. So value in Manitoba, 118 billion, generating over $1 billion in tax revenue is what property taxes generate. Just over 600 million of that is municipal taxes. So it's quite a large amount. And on the next screen, we talk about what we're guided by, and I keep coming back to this. We just try to be as fair as possible. And, often I give credit to people that take out permits and don't take shortcuts, take out the proper permits. And permits for us typically is what triggers an inspection of a property. If we don't typically get a permit, we're not just going out and randomly inspecting properties on a usual basis. But, through the years, often what you may have happening is inequities are formed. Let's say, and maybe I'll personalize a little bit. Let's say Councillor Pactican takes out 5 permits. He builds a house, finishes his basement, puts in an in-ground pool, he's been above ground. And then, someone else builds a shop, builds a deck, builds a gazebo, no permits. So the one person gets assessed for all these improvements to their property, and the person that doesn't get all these permits isn't paying taxes on the property. So is that fair? And so for us, with assessments, our guiding principle, is it fair? If someone calls and complains and says, well, my assessment is X, the person across the way has this, this, and this, and this, and they're assessed for less than me, is that fair? No, it's not. And so we're always trying to make sure that everyone's assessed as fairly as possible. And so what we have is, what we refer to as an inspection standard. So our goal is to inspect every property in Manitoba every 8 years that has a building on it, and every vacant piece of land every 12 years. And back in the good old days of assessment, we did it by physically inspecting properties. And if we can skip ahead a couple screens to the sorry. So limitations of physical inspection screen. So often we would have issues of travel time, weather time. Lots of people put up fences, no trespassing. Everyone's got a camera on their property now. We have people phoning, complaining that one of your staff was at our property. What are they doing? We're looking at my property. Well, we're doing our job. And we have the legislated right to be on a property. But not everyone is happy when we show up. Generally, most people are good about it, but there are limitations to inspecting. So what we've been doing is something that assessment jurisdictions across North America are doing, and that's using aerial imagery to supplement our inspections. And the benefits are pretty substantial. So on the next screen, we've partnered with a provider called EagleView. And what they do is, we've contracted with them to fly a number of communities in the province. And West St. Paul has actually been flown twice by the provider. So we did it back in around 2015, and we did it last year. And last year, because there's so much smoke in the air in May, we came back in November, and they flew again. The problem with our imagery in November was the shadows. The days were shorter, so you'd see shadowing. But it was quite interesting to see in May the progress of construction on a new build to November. And the resolution quality of this imagery is quite good. If you're comparing it, say, to Google Earth, the pixel quality is much better. Now, some people may feel, is this a Big Brother thing? Well, maybe you feel that way, and I apologize, but it's a tool that we use that helps us do our job better. And it has some great built-in tools that help us do our job better. So on the next screen are a couple examples. So there are measuring tools. So there's a image on the left. So there's sort of like a teal outline of a building, and that's showing the perimeter of that building. And sometimes, so it's very important to make sure we have the right perimeter. Sometimes when we're comparing that to old imagery, you find that there could be an addition built that we weren't aware of. So we actually have change recognition in software now that is helping us with that. In the image in the middle, well, often we go to a property with an in-ground pool, has a deck. There's a big fence and 2 big dogs, so we're not going to get into the backyard. But using this imagery, we can measure that deck to the square foot, and we can get that pool measured to the square foot. So it's a real accurate tool that helps us do our job. The image on the right, there's a green line and a sort of a blue line, and that green line is just showing an 18-inch eave that goes on the perimeter of a property. So again, it's a really good tool to have. And I believe these are all pictures from the same property.
I have 6-foot eaves at my place. Just mark that down, please.
So one thing we do find is, like, sometimes, like, we'll be going along and we'll compare what our records show to what's on a property. And if there's a disconnect, we'll do what we call a kick out. So we'll send an assessor to go and do an on-site inspection to see, are we wrong, or is there something here we're not aware of? So that helps us immensely. So on this next screen is, it shows, this last year we started using this change finder. So we've flown, like, as I mentioned, West St. Paul twice now, East St. Paul, a chunk of St. Andrews, St. Clements, and City of Selkirk. And on this map, you can see the yellow indicates the contact foot measurements have changed on our property, so all the yellow indicates that. You see the pink indicates buildings that have been demolished, so we can zoom in on those. The white are existing. Green's anything that's new. And then blue is, we're not sure. So those require a deeper dive. So what do we do with this imagery? So province-wide, from December to March, every year we will identify an area that we do a desktop review of. And so this past year, we reviewed, it was basically an audit of 30,000 properties in Manitoba. And about 25,000 of those were in our district, and about 5,000 were up north in the Thompson, Flin Flon area. And so we did a door-to-door review of 25,000 properties. Now West St. Paul, because it's a compact municipality, it's not like St. Andrews, which stretches out and has large areas that aren't very populated. West St. Paul is quite compact, so we were able to review all the property in West St. Paul. And so what we did is we went on a door-to-door basis, and that's where we do that fairness and equity thing, where we're confirming what's there to what our records show. We have all the permit information on file. We also have real estate listing information, so all of this helps us to arrive at as fair of an evaluation as possible. And so out of this year's project in West St. Paul, it resulted in $52 million in assessment changes. So to the average residential roll, there were just over 4,500. It resulted in a value change of about $11,000 on average. And on commercial rolls, it worked out to an average increase of about $16,600 a roll. And so what we did is we targeted a minimum threshold that we would use to generate supplemental taxes. So if there was, say, a 40 by 60 shop that someone added without a permit, they would be getting a supplemental tax bill as a result of that. Or if we found that if that same 40 by 60 building had been removed, we would take it off and we'd generate a supplementary bill. So we're not just adding, we're just calling it the way it is. And so that was the impact of that door-to-door program in West St. Paul. And we did that in a number of municipalities in this region, capital region on the north side of Winnipeg. And every year, and so we do that from December to March. Every year we have a quality assurance team that reviews, will randomly select roles and do an audit of our staff's work just to ensure that they're being consistent and how they're approaching properties. And we'll also kick out properties as well where something doesn't look right, and we'll go and double check on those as well. Yeah, this screen here just shows areas that have been flown in the last 10 years. So we have imagery of Churchill. City of Brandon has actually gone out and purchased their own imagery from the provider on top of what we do. So we're flying West St. Paul every 8 years, but if West St. Paul wanted to get its own imagery, you can contact the provider. I have brought a stick for staff here where we can provide you with top-down imagery of West St. Paul, and that's provided to West St. Paul if you would like. You can also get access to the imagery for your staff if you wanted to at a much lower cost than what we paid, because we had to pay the full cost for that.
Councillor Kleiber has a comment.
Good.
Yeah, I noticed that you had said earlier that our assessments are higher than the city of Winnipeg at this point. And maybe I missed the boat here, but why are we higher than the city of Winnipeg as far as that goes?
So the average increase is higher. So in a lot of northern communities, in Winnipeg, some areas went up 12, 13%. In West St. Paul, it's a combination of two things. strong market and lots of new construction. And there, as I mentioned, there are literally hundreds of new homes being built in West St. Paul, so that goes into part of that equation. And the values in West St. Paul are very strong. So the median residential assessment is $587,000.
Because the complaint that we hear, you know, with all this development going on, the residents that currently live there don't want to be affected with reassessment and higher costs because of all the development. But what you're saying is that's exactly what's happening. Am I wrong there?
Not necessarily. So when we do our sales analysis, we break West St. Paul down into a number of different neighborhoods. And so if, say, someone lives in Riverdale, which would be an established neighborhood within West St. Paul, we're not going to compare someone in Riverdale to someone in Parkview Point, for example. Right? So we do make a distinction between various neighborhoods, because if you have a brand new neighborhood, that will sell differently. The lots are different. You have some parts of West St. Paul that are rural residential on large acreages, which sell differently than, say, lots in other areas, or say in older neighborhoods. So we look at all of that separately. But ultimately, market dictates what the assessment values are.
Okay,
Does
thank
that
you.
answer your question?
It's not the answer I like, but
Yeah.
it does answer the question.
Yeah, and sometimes we give the answer, and so it's not the most popular answer, but I'll put this question out there. Would you rather be in a position where your assessment has just dropped $200,000 and you're underwater on your mortgage? Or is it better to be in a community that is desirable, where values are growing, people are moving to, because it's deemed to be a good community to live in? And that's kind of how.
Well, I mean, that's what you hope I would say, but I'm looking after people that have been here 25 years, and when their property gets reassessed to match or to come closer to the new values, it's not always fair, because they haven't done any renovations, they haven't really done anything, and all of a sudden their taxes are going up because of new development. And that's what a lot of our citizens are really angry about. So we have to deal with the outfall of that. And when to say, no, it's not going to affect your taxes, what you're saying is, yes, it is going to affect your taxes. Let me give you an example. We have a street called River Springs Drive. And on that street, we have established homes that have been there for 20 years. They're beautiful homes. They're on 15,000 square feet lots, and they're 75 feet wide. They're very nice. Across the street, new development, 55-foot lots, but the houses are now about $800,000, even though they're smaller lots. They're bigger. They're bigger houses, smaller lots. What you're saying to me is, okay, so we're going to reassess that street, and we're going to reassess the ones across the street too. So their taxes are going to go up to meet the ones across the street, even though their assessment has been established long before this. It actually boosts their assessment because of what's going on across the street from them. Is that correct?
So at the end of the day, our assessments should reflect the market value of a property. And so if generally when a person calls us, I would ask them, in looking at your assessment, do you believe that's a fair estimate of the market value of your property? And if the response gets very quiet, which sometimes happens, then sometimes people are comfortable with the value. But if someone calls us and says, you know what, no, my property isn't worth that because I haven't done anything to my property in 30 years, I have a foundation problem, I have 3 feet of water in my basement. Well, you know what, those are all legitimate concerns, And in a case like that, I'd say, would you allow one of our staff to come out and take a look at your property? Because if the value is not accurate, we want to amend that.
Yeah, but how do you know if the value is accurate unless you put it on the market? Like, how do you establish your market value? So let's say I'm gonna sell my house. I know what I paid for my house. I know what my tax bill says
Yeah.
my house is worth. I know what the insurance guy says my house is worth, and it's always double what the tax bill says, because they're gonna do replacement costs or whatever. What assessment do I go with? How do I know what the market is for my home? Do I just look up listings and say, okay, well, I think mine's about there? Is
So-
that how I establish my fair market value? How do you do that?
So we do it, I explained earlier in the presentation. So what we do is we look at sales within that 2-year period, between April 1st, 2021 and April 1st, 2023. That's the data that we go on. So if someone filed an assessment appeal with concern, so if you're on the north side of River Springs Drive, we would try to look for sales in the general vicinity that were sold in that time frame. And those sales would show us whether or not the valuation is in line or not. If a property sold last week, we can't use that sale, because the sales we're using are the ones up to April 1st, 2023. And what we do to be transparent is we do list all the sales on our website. And if anyone calls any of our staff, we're more than happy to share that sales information with people as well.
So what you're saying is basically, and I don't mean to be rude, or I don't mean to be confrontational,
Mhm.
but what you're doing is really your best guess based on market.
Yep.
I mean, my house isn't gonna be comparable to the guy next to me necessarily, so it's basically your best guess here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna use the same street as Councillor Kleiber did, but earlier in your presentation, you said that a new build would be categorized different than an existing. So, like, as Councillor Kleiber brings up, River Springs Drive, the whole south side is new. So that wouldn't really affect the north side, which is, I'm gonna say 20+ years in existence.
So we'll use River Springs Drive as an example. If on the north side, a lot of those homes were built 2000, 2002 in that time frame. I was inside a lot of those homes when they were built. Property depreciates, right? So let's say you built a house on the 2 homes side by side. Identical feature spec for spec, except one house is 20 years old and one is brand new. The brand new house will be assessed higher because there's 0 depreciation on that property. Whereas the 20-year-old house has depreciation applied to it. So the assessment would be lower on that older residence. So we take all those factors into account. And like I say, we try to be as fair as possible. So if so we do take age, condition, features, amenities, all of that goes into the assessment.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is not necessarily that the homes on the north side are gonna be reassessed at a higher value because of the homes on the south side.
Yeah.
Because of the different things that you've listed. So it's, as Councillor Kleiber said, a guess. You know,
Yep.
you're working with it. But at the same time, you're taking into consideration the years that they're built, you know. You can tell, just driving around, and see what area was built just from the looks of them,
Yep.
from what era, right? So, okay, that's all I needed, thank you.
Okay. So, if I can move on to the next screen. So yeah, on this, sorry, any more questions about
No.
that? No. Our next screen here, we just zoom in a bit more on some of the areas that we've flown. And again, as I mentioned, we've flown a lot of the areas north side of Winnipeg and south, east, and west. So we basically have updated our imagery. It's not all done at once because we spend approximately $150,000 a year on this imagery. So it's a substantial capital investment for us, but we definitely see tremendous value in that imagery. The next slide just speaks about some of the projects that we've done. So we started using this imagery in 2014. And when we first started, we assigned 4 staff to try to work on 14,000 properties. And we quickly learned that that wasn't going to work. Doing inspections using aerial imagery is a lot more efficient, but it's not as efficient as we thought it would be initially the first year. So we've learned each year we've done the project, and we move around to different parts of the province every year, and we're involving more and more staff in the project so we can complete and keep our assessments as up to date as possible. So from 2014 to 2023, this time around we had up to 41 staff working on the project, and we completed 31,000 rolls this year. So that's basically an audit of 31,000 properties. The traditional method of going out and inspecting on site would be a fraction of that. Probably we're probably looking at 1/3 to 1/5 of that figure, depending on where the properties are located. And I've done both. I used to do when I started in assessment, the old school method of measuring in January. I don't know if anyone's tried to measure some grain bins in the arm of Bifrost in January when it's -30. It's not very comfortable. But we have a lot of tools now that we didn't have back then, and we're using them. Our next screen talks about how our inspection numbers have changed over the past few years. So these are properties that we've reviewed using just the imagery, and so to date we've reviewed almost 165,000 properties across the province using aerial imagery. And this past year was our largest project to date. Our next page talks a bit about how we do inspections. So this has changed quite a bit through the years. So back in 2012, we basically did 2 types of inspections. We did office reviews and field inspections. And the field inspections are the blue part, the blue tab, and the green part of it would be our office reviews. And we've been adding new tools every couple of years. And so in 2015, we started using aerial imagery. So at the top of that bar in 2015, you can see how many properties we use the aerial imagery with. And so we've started to use that more and more. And the trend line is showing we're doing more and more reviews every year as a result of all the new tools that we're using. In 2017, we obtained Keystone Matrix licenses for all our staff. So in the old days of assessment, every single property that's sold, we would physically go and inspect. We'd go there, we'd knock on the door. Most of the time, people weren't home. We'd leave a door card. Not everyone calls us. So we weren't able to capture as much information as we would have liked to. We tried our best, but weren't able to. Using Keystone Matrix, we're able to get listing information. There's lots of pictures there. It helps us when we're doing our sales analysis to make sure that we're capturing the characteristics of sales, and it also helps us flag sales that are outside of what we would deem a normal range. So it's been a great tool. And so the addition of the aerial imagery, Keystone Matrix, have all combined to increase our inspections. And I think our assessments are much more in line with market than what they were before. Going forth to future years, we will be implementing tablet technology in the next year. And so currently we have the system we use with our staff is when they're going to inspect, we have what we call field sheets, which are basically the file information on a property. Our staff will print those field sheets out, and go inspecting when they know where they're going. With the tablets, that'll all be available online, and our staff will be able to automatically update their inspection notes out in the field. And so we'll be able to download that automatically, and it'll ensure our staff are out in the field more and sitting behind a desk less. And that's being introduced next year. And the tablets, you know, we can't use them in January. The technology isn't there where you can use them when it's -40. Anyone with an iPhone knows what happens when you know it's cold out there or you drop in the snow. But they'll be a great tool in that April to November timeframe. And it'll be another tool for us to use. So this slide here just shows some of the assessment changes that came out of this year's project. So I've shared the West St. Paul figures with you, but those are all the municipalities that we did our desktop review projects in. So in West St. Paul, we reviewed all properties. Other municipalities like St. Andrews, for example, or St. Clements, we can't fly the entire area because they're just so big. St. Andrews goes from South St. Andrews all the way up to Lake Winnipeg practically and west. We can't do those areas entirely, but West St. Paul, the Selkirks, and East St. Paul's of the world, we can fly those entire communities. And so our last screen talks about just the return on investment. So I like to think we're a very lean shop in terms of the work that we do. Like I think we're a lean shop. We do a lot of work, and this imagery helps us do our work better. And this shows the return on investment. So we're averaging 18,000 of these property reviews a year. They're generating about $1.3 million in added revenue. $141,000 is the average cost, and so when we look at return on investment, we're looking at about a 900% return on investment when we're using this imagery. So to us, it makes sense to use the imagery. And so that's something that we did over the last year in West St. Paul, and thought we would share. So what I've done, as well as I've brought along a stick to share with the admin staff, so they won't be able to access all the imagery with it, but they can get top-down imagery using that, and that's a great tool. Bylaw enforcement, police, fire, all of those people can use this information to better do their jobs. So that's it for the property assessment presentation.
Anyone else have any more questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming down and explaining this. We appreciate it. It was well done.
Hope we didn't take up too much of your time, but I think there's lots of information there that's
Sure was.
I misspoke on one fact. I want to correct it right now. When I talked about the number of dwelling units, I did make one mistake. So in 2012, there are 1,879 properties with one dwelling unit. And I said it doubled. That was not right. There are 2,644 dwelling units currently. So up from 1,800 in 2012. So a big jump, but not double. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us now down to number 9, bylaw for consideration, 9.1. Second reading of Canada Community Building Reserve Fund Bylaw 2024-9. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-09 being a bylaw of the rural municipality of West St. Paul to update the name in the gas tax reserve fund and rescind bylaw 4/2006 be read a second time. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move it.
Councilor Bichetti moves. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Councilor Campbell seconds it. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Go down to 9.2, third reading of the Canada Community Building Reserve Fund Bylaw 2024-9. This is going to be a recorded vote. Be it resolved that the bylaw 2024-9, being a bylaw of the rural municipality of West St. Paul to update the name in the gas tax reserve fund and rescind bylaw 4/2006 be read a third and final time, signed, sealed, and therefore passed as a bylaw of the rural municipality of West St. Paul. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councilor Bichetti moves. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Councilor Campbell seconds. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Wondering if- Thank you. Okay, we're now down to 10.1 accounts received as information. Does anyone have any questions or comments on it? Hearing none, okay, we'll go down to 11, payroll monthly statements. Be it resolved that the payroll for the month of April as follows be approved as presented. Could I have a mover, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Pascal moves. Can I have a seconder, please?
second.
Councilor Bichetti seconds. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Okay, there's nothing in 12, 13, there's nothing. That takes us down to 14, communications, 14.1, Cartier Regional Water Co-op, received for information. I believe that's the annual report. Is that what it is? There are financial statements. Does anyone have any comments, questions on it? Hearing none, okay, go down to 15.1, Circle of Hearts Family, go ahead. 14, oh, yes, okay, thank you very much. Manitoba Good Roads Association 2024 Annual Competition, received for information. Does anyone have any questions, comments on it? Councilor Pactican?
Yeah, no, I just looking at this, and I know that we've had a number of calls and regarding Miller Road recently with the condition of it being really rutted due to the recent rainfall. And I know that Public Works has been busy grading it, and I understand they're going to be putting some aggregate on it, which is great. Just wanting to know if the ORM would be. It says here that there's a category called Municipal Gravel Road Maintenance Contest. We're already automatically entered, but if our CAO can maybe just flag perhaps Miller Road, because it's receiving some attention in terms of, you know,
So
submitted as an entry.
Okay.
Yeah. My understanding is that Public Works is going to be putting some aggregate on it, and but they're just waiting. It's weather dependent, that they want to make sure that the road is dry so that you get good value when you're maintaining that road. So I just thought that this is timely because it's coming out at the same time that this is happening. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Okay, we'll carry on to 15.1, Circle of Hearts Family Support Network grant request for rental fees to be waived. Be it resolved that the Council of the Rural Municipality of West St. Paul waive the Access Center facility rental fees for the Circle of Hearts Family Support Network event held on November 17th, 2024, in the amount of $546, including taxes. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move it.
Councilor Bichetti moves. Can I have a seconder, please? Anyone want to second it? I'll second it. Any comments, questions?
Is just a quick
Go ahead,
question. Is
Councillor
this,
Bartka.
is it just the history of it? Is this something that the RM has supported in the past? Or is this the first time this is an application for, or?
It was the second time.
Second time.
They did it here once before, and, we supported it in the past. We, did, we were, the residents.
Okay. And is this composed of members of living in the RM, or?
Yeah, there's, it's, children, represents children with heart disease in Manitoba, including, residents of West St. Paul, Nunavut, and South Ontario as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Takes us down now to number 18, question period. Does anyone have any questions? By all means.
Norma Albert, 312 Edward Avenue. Just some clarification, I think. I noticed that in camera is West St. Paul Trails Committee. So when they came as a delegation last month, I watched the YouTube actually a few times, but I'm still not quite getting it. My interpretation was that they were, perhaps on behalf of the RM of St. Andrews, asking West St. Paul to contribute $200,000 towards their pedestrian bridge over Parks Creek. When I looked at the planning board maps on the west side of Main Street, Parks Creek to me was extremely clearly in the RM of St. Andrews. And so it seems odd to me. I know that we have service agreements with other RMs on, say, emergency service, but did the RM of St. Andrews contribute to our pedestrian bridges here? Why would we consider giving to theirs? Or am I misinterpreting? Were they meaning for us to put the $200,000 in West St. Paul leading up to the bridge? Which again, if that's it, I'm still confused. Why would another RM tell a neighboring RM how and when and why to use what money? So have I missed, did I not catch the presentation properly?
West St. Paul was approached by St. Andrews to connect across to put money in towards the bridge so that the trails in West St. Paul could be connected to St. Andrews, which would make it part of the Canada Trails. We have talked about it, and there hasn't been yet a final decision made on that yet, but we are in discussions about that. So.
Am I correct from the maps to say that that Parks Creek is solely in St. Andrews at that time, at that point?
Yes, because the boundary is just
South of the creek.
south of the creek, yes. So it is in their boundaries of St. Andrews, but their rationale for it is that it is extending the trails from West St. Paul's into St. Andrews. West St. Paul residents will probably be going into St. Andrews. That was their argument on it.
But our pedestrian bridge here also extends on to St. Andrews. One
That
would
is-
say.
Yes, we know that.
Okay, all right. So there's no final decision on that.
No, not yet, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay,
Can I just ask a question if, just to the staff?
Go ahead,
Well,
yes.
I know that there was a notice that was sent out this afternoon regarding the heavy rainfall, and that was great. I thought that was good. Is there any concerns, are there any concerns from staff relative to being able to respond if there's unplanned overland flooding? Like, can our ditch system take it, this kind of rainfall in a short period of time?
We don't have, we do have staff on
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so that takes us now to 19 in camera. We're going to be going 19.1, we're going to go in camera. Be it resolved that in accordance with section 152-3 of the Municipal Act, council does now move in camera to discuss matters that are in preliminary stages and respecting what discussion in public could prejudice a municipality's ability to carry out its activities or negotiations. Be it further resolved that in accordance with section 83(1)(d) of the Municipal Act, any issues that are discussed are kept confidential until discussed at a regular meeting of council. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Campbell moves. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Councillor Patcan seconds it. Any comments, questions? Can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, for the Rising Report, we have a couple of resolutions. First, as we discussed, had some discussions on West St. Paul Trails Committee. We have a resolution in dealing with the terms of reference with the West St. Paul Trails Committee. Be it resolved that Council of the Rural Municipality of West St. Paul approve the amended terms of reference for the West St. Paul Trails Committee as presented. Could I have a mover, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Patcan moves. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Councillor Campbell seconds it. Any comments, questions?
Mayor,
Go
I
ahead.
believe that we did make a change.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor
For the
Clyburn.
amount, for the amount of members up to,
Or a maximum of.
as amended.
Yes, that changes the note.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So be it resolved that that the council of the RMs, okay, we've had comments, okay, can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next, we, 19.3.12, we then had a discussion about St. Andrews walking trails, Parks Creek pedestrian crossing. Next, we go down to 19.3.2, the Accessibility Committee, there was a resolution, citizens at large. Whereas the Council of the Rural Municipality of West St. Paul passed resolution 2024-066 at the regular meeting of council held February 22nd, 2024, to establish an accessibility committee and approve the accessibility committee terms of reference. And whereas section 5.2 of the accessibility committee terms of reference provides that a composition of accessibility committees must include a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 6 citizens at large. Now therefore be it resolved that Albert Doromsky, or I don't know, Cheryl Raffer, Melanie Ann Barnachuk, Norma Albert, and Sapnapa Seti Hees be appointed to the Accessibility Committee. Could I have a mover for it, please?
I'll move.
Councilor Campbell moves. Can I have a
I'll second.
seconder? Councilor Bichetti seconds it. Any comments, questions? Okay, can I call for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We also had a discussion on zoning bylaw updates, and we had a discussion regarding our RPD, Regular Planning District. Go down now to adjournment. Be it resolved that this meeting of council stands adjourned at 8:59 PM. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councilor Campbell moves. Could I have a seconder?
So second.
Councilor Bichetti, Paxton seconds it. Can I have, any comments, questions? Can I call for the vote? Hearing none?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Carried. Meeting is adjourned.